Ja, ja, samlo samdi testle shuyu. Pöchinani yue pemi samlo samdi testle shuyu. Today we are going to discuss an issue that is very close to my heart and I'm very passionate about. That is the empowerment of the young generation of Tibetans, the empowerment of the youth and the Tibetan women. Now this, I have personally been involved with Tibetan youth for quite a long time, particularly during my tenure as Director of Tibetan Parliamentary and Policy Research Center. I had the opportunity to serve the younger generation in organizing 2 workshops every year in Dharamsala on our own from the institution side. And every year we hold a workshop for grade 11 and then for university students. At that time, offers were made to youngsters in foreign countries, but very few could manage to participate in it. And those are 9 days workshop. I will talk about that later, about the content of the workshop that relates to what I'm going to speak today also. Now, when we talk about youth in Tibetan diaspora today, who are we talking about? Now, apart from the youths inside Tibet, we are talking about Tibetan youths in some 37, 40 different countries all around the world. So you have this group of youth who are born in India, Nepal, and Bhutan in compact communities or scattered communities, but always have a sense of community, brought up in that environment. And then second, we have those children who are grandchildren of the first generation of Tibetans who moved to the West, say Norway, Sweden, France, Switzerland, and all those countries, including the United States also. Some of them arrived in the 60s. So their children's children are now youngsters today. Then we have the third group, those who have moved in the last 20, 30 years when they were kids, when they were children, to other countries. And then, as I mentioned before, also on top of that, we have the youth inside Tibet who are very, very vibrant in their own way, despite the difficult circumstances that they live in. Now, for us to develop a future plan for the Tibetan youth, it's very, very important for us to understand who are the Tibetan youths. Actually, some of you need to do a research on this. Who are the Tibetan youths? What are their backgrounds? Under what social conditions and economic conditions do they live in? So you have youths in India, Nepal, Bhutan who are a little backward economically. And then you have the Tibetans in Europe, North America, Australia, and many other countries. So we need to have an understanding of what the youth aspires to be. And depending on their area of expertise, now how do we make it contributing for the Tibetan community? So that is, in a way, talking about the young leaders now who are in position to take leadership positions, or those who are in the process of becoming or taking up leadership roles within the community, so that they can drive the community forward, whether it can be in any part of the world. And we have to, our job is to provide you with all the tools that are necessary for you to become a leader or a responsible Tibetan within the community. So far, with the blessing of benevolence of His Holiness, with the blessings of His Holiness, with the leadership of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, we have managed to keep this community intact, compact, totally capable of preserving our own identity. And you have also worked very hard to live in a different country, or to jump from one civilization to another civilization, cross that bridge and then make a living, and also be in a position to serve the community today. So that achievement itself is in no way small. And so now, if you were to entrust me with the responsibility of Sikong, I have our job. Our job would be to nurture youth leaders and provide them with the means and the opportunity to prove their leadership skills. Now, how do we do that? So today we have, as I mentioned before, we have youth all around the world, and very vibrant youth communities also. So under different social and economic conditions, but it's time now. It's time now to make this clarion call for all the youth around the world to come together, connect, and cooperate for our community, for our cause. That is my clarion call today. Now, every time in a community, we always talk about what was in the past and how it has impacted us and all that. Now, we have to have a clear understanding of how do we move forward. Where are we today? We have to learn from the past experience. And then collectively, how do we do it in the future? It's not possible for our administration or a government to fulfill every people's aspirations. It's not. Therefore, you have so many other non-governmental organizations also in a democratic system to assist the community to come together where the government is not able to reach. So, therefore, my means is to move forward. How do we move forward? That is the key question. So then again, it comes to responsibility, the word responsibility. Okay, let me share a small story. When it was just 1 or 2 years after I took over the responsibility of the director of Tibetan Parliamentary and Policy Research Center in Delhi, then we were organizing this. For the first time, the TPPRC was by itself organizing a workshop for the youth. And Acharya Shupenzo was working with me at that time. And we invited Professor Samdong Rinpoche to speak to the youth about their responsibilities. And after 1 hour, there was not one word from Professor Samdong Rinpoche as to what the Tibetan youth should be doing for their cause and for their community and for their relatives, brethren inside Tibet. Rinpoche spent 1 hour explaining the difference between the two words in Tibetan, lenge, and in English, responsibility. Now, these words also reflects people's mentality. Now, when Tibetans say lenge, it's more of a voluntary thing that you want to do. But when you say the word response or responsibility in English, you are responding to somebody's call or somebody's need, or so the strength of the power of your energy, where you're focusing, makes a difference, and your mindset. So I wanted to share this with you because that is what Rinpoche feels. It's not necessary for one Tibetan to tell another Tibetan what your responsibility is. That is your inherent responsibility. You are born a Tibetan. Your flesh, your blood, you are born, everything is Tibetan, whether you like it or not. Whatever citizenship or whatever nationality you have today, it's all because of it, somewhere connected to His Holiness the Dalai Lama and the Central Tibetan Administration. So even though some of you did it by yourself, I know that is an achievement by itself, but in our upbringing, in the community that we live, in the way that we have developed, there is always the blessing of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. So So this word responsibility, when you have to fill a responsibility, then what do we need to do, particularly as a Tibetan youth? I'm not just talking about Tibetan youth here. Generally, within the Tibetan community, the level of political understanding or social understanding is very low, except for, of course, a few people who are always very alert on learning these things. Uh, Now, today's youth, you, you are today's youth. Okay, unlike previous generations, like us or our parents or those who came from Tibet, you have uh, developed a high sense of technological expertise in reaching out to each other and also learning new things. Therefore, you mature, your generation mature faster than what we did or how we did. Um, and you have reached a stage now where you are in a position to take the responsibility within the community. Mm. Now, when you get this feeling that I'm a Tibetan, that I should shoulder my people's responsibility or my cause responsibility or my community's responsibility, then there are some questions that are inevitable in your mind, and you have to ask that and you have to find the answers. There is no way you can do things without knowing things. So the first question you yourself must ask yourself is, am I really in a position to explain to somebody else about Tibet's past history or the present situation, what is going on inside Tibet? And generally very basic information like Tibetan geography, Tibetan population, the ecosystem, which is not just important for Tibet but the whole region, and then Tibetan religion. How much do you understand your own religion? Even though some of you, okay, of course, spirituality is an individual's choice, but then if you say you are a Buddhist, how much do you know about Buddhism? There are exceptions, of course, but then most of us, or Tibetan culture, or Tibetan way of life, how much am I in a position to explain to somebody else about these things? The second question that you have to ask yourself is, have I paid any attention to the exile community? Where are our offices located? What are the institutions? Which are the organizations that support the system? And ask yourself, do I really know much about all these things? So we need to be able to think. We need to be able to listen. We need to be able to analyze situations. Don't just listen. Don't just decide based on one person says. If you hear something new, make sure that the information is correct. You get a second opinion, you get a third opinion, just like when you go to a doctor to diagnose a disease. Similar is the case. Then you will be in a better position to serve your community, knowing exactly what's happening, the right kind of information, not disinformation or misinformation that's happening in the Tibetan world today. The third question you need to ask is, do I have a fair knowledge of what's happening around the world? Now, today, the situation around the world, political, economic, military, everything is so very dynamic. So we have to have an understanding of what is happening around the world. Or do you have enough idea about what is happening around the world? And not just that, what bearing does it have on our issue? How does it affect our issue? What consequences it may or may not have on our cause? So that is something that you need to understand, whether you are paying enough attention or try to gain knowledge of what's happening in that. Then the fourth question is, do I know enough about what the CTA is doing? How much do they spend? Where do they get the money from? These are the Dharamsala, the Central Tibetan administration is like your big family, the main family. Now, without understanding the situation or the structure or who is doing what, then it doesn't help you in understanding how I can be of use for the Tibetan cause or the community by being within the administration or being outside or within a compact community or scattered in a totally different area where you are single by yourself or your family is single. That doesn't matter as long as your mind is networked with the Tibetan community. So all these things you have to know, and you have to also ask yourself, how much am I contributing to the Tibetan cause in a year in terms of monetary, in terms of time? I know there are many who do a lot of good things. I really appreciate them. Then I'm talking about the general Tibetan youths. Ask this question to yourself as to how much are you able to contribute to the cause or the Central Tibetan administration. And then, of course, the first thing or the last thing, am I aware of my responsibility as a Tibetan? Who are we? What are we supposed to do? And how can I be a contributing member to my community in my own way? You don't need to be particularly part of an association or a movement, but then by singularly being dedicated to the cause, there are many things that you can do. So these are things that we need to learn, and by employing all these knowledges, if we do what we need to do, then I can tell you that you will be leading, or you are leading, a meaningful life. When you die, you know you did something good, and that is what living is all about. So now the question is, if I'm entrusted with the responsibility, what will I do? What will Pemba Tsering do as a Sikyong? The first thing is, of course, before what we do, I have to tell you that you have to take out little time. You have to spare time to learn little more. Read, watch, listen, observe, and then be in a position to analyze yourself. You know, what we will do is, I'll tell you later, and over and above making a livelihood for yourself, which is, of course, very essential, your existential problem. Without a livelihood, it won't be able to, for you to survive. So you have to have a good livelihood for yourself and for your family. But over and above that, you have to develop this sense of commitment and courage to offer your services to the common good of the Tibetans. That you need. Without that, you will not be in any mental or physical position to do anything for our cause or for our people. So that I'm requesting you to do, because I know some people say don't preach. Some youngsters don't like to listen to older people talking a lot of things, but then this is also true. You will know in your life. So one, what we will do, if I'm entrusted with the job as Sikyong, is we will provide you with all the information personally when you meet us, or through people who are experts. You know, they will reach out to you, or physically or visually. We will reach out to you, and this information is only for this information, just like computer. It's fed in your system. Then you have to analyze what you want to do, how you can do it, and how do I take a position. So one thing, to understand your main family is very important. Understanding Dharamsala is very important. So what we will do is we will set up a visitor center for everybody, whether it's Tibetan or non-Tibetan, anybody who's interested in understanding the central how the Tibetan democratic system works, or how Central Tibetan administration works. We will have collective group tours of all these places in Dharamsala through a visitor center. And specifically for children, we will devise special programs for them to introduce all the branches, the main offices and its affiliates in Dharamsala, and then you'll also have opportunities to visit cultural centers, religious centers, non-governmental organizations in Dharamsala, which is essential to understand, get a holistic understanding of how the community is located. You know? So that we will do. And for those who will not be able to, or who are not able to come to Dharamsala, we'll provide them with visual introduction of how CTA functions. So that will at least set in the young Tibetans' mind that, okay, we are part of this. This belongs to us, not just the ones who are elected to the post. They are there for 5 years, 10 years, but not more than that. You know, so this belongs to us. So we have to have understanding of this, and we will create this understanding even through literature, you know, on the introduction of CTA. Then I have a lot of experience in organizing workshops and seminars and those kind, particularly with the younger generation. So I'll use all my expertise to develop in creating teams for seminars and workshops for Tibetans all around the world. And we will encourage you, when you are there in Dharamsala, we will encourage you to become future leaders if you have the capability to do it. Then when you are there as an ambassador for the people in Tibet, when we are representing our people inside Tibet, what we need to do is we need to know what are the current policies of the People's Republic of China. Now, at the end of all the weekly sessions that I do, this will be the last subject I'll speak on, and the most important subject that I'll speak on before I make a general appeal to the Tibetan public before the elections. So we will provide you with update on what's happening inside Tibet, Chinese policies, people's living conditions, education, environment, you know, monastic institutions, everything. Overall, what is happening inside Tibet, we'll keep updating you. And then we'll also provide you with how the Communist China functions. For us to be able to find a solution, we have to understand our own opponent. So for that, you have to understand how Communist China functions. And then we'll also provide you a summary of the position of the international community in general, and under circumstances when there are new developments, we'll let you know what's happening. So all these information will help you become effective advocates for the Tibetan cause, whether you're meeting a member of parliament or you know, a politician or a scholar or a foreign office staffer, human rights organizations, anybody, you know, then you are in a position to explain to them what is going on. Then it's very important for us to understand our own history. We are not asking you to repeat history if there are mistakes. We have to learn from history to get an overall understanding of what is happening today, because history always leaves its baggages on humans' mind. So we have to understand history also from different perspectives, not just from the Tibetan perspective, but also from Chinese perspective, or also from Western scholars. Who is talking about what? That we have to get an overall. Then you get an idea of how the community is transforming today. What are people's mindset based on what has happened before? So this will help us in moving forward to find a solution by understanding the root causes, the reasons why it's happening. That's very important. So we'll organize history workshops, or we'll invite experts on Tibetan history and request them to speak on Tibetan history virtually, so that everybody gets the opportunity to listen to it if you're interested. And we'll create a special portal for that, for you to get all the right kind of information about Tibet. Then we'll also inform you as to how do we manage our expenses. What are the main projects that we are working on? It's very important for you to understand before you spend how much we have in our pocket. If we don't know what we have in our pocket, where it's coming from or where it's going, then you have there's no way you can comment or make a positive contribution on improving if there are derelictions or uh, failures or shortcomings. So it's important for you, and then you can also think about how I can contribute in this, because eventually we have to sustain ourselves. I'll be speaking on the finance part separately another week, 2 weeks from, or 1 week from now, or 2 weeks from now. So we'll speak more in detail about that. Then we have to have an understanding. This is very important. We have to have an understanding of what the Tibetan youths inside are doing and thinking and writing or singing, in all its art forms, because they are very, very sharp. Living under very difficult circumstances, they come out with very innovative, non-violent means to show their displeasure or dissatisfaction. So there we have to have a better understanding. It's very, very important, so that the youth in the diaspora and the Tibetans youth inside Tibet, coming from all three regions of Tibet, there has to be more interaction. We also need to have a better understanding of what the new Tibetan youth inside Tibet think. So so that we will give special attention to understanding that, and then we can give you ideas, and we can also tell you what initiatives that you can take. Even if you are living alone by yourself. For example, I met one Tibetan from Pokhara, who was earlier from Pokhara, now lives in a city, in a resort place in Italy, and he once met me and asked me, what can I do? I'm just there by myself and there are no other Tibetans around. So I told him, you're working at a resort whose customers pay 300, 400 to 600, 1,000 euros per day as rent to live in that resort, which means they are rich, and by fate you might come across some people who are sympathetic to the Tibetan cause, or you may have the opportunity to explain them about Tibet and they become sympathetic to it. And if you are able to get a sponsor for another Tibetan in India, a poor child in India, whether it's in Tibetan children's villages or under the Department of Education or wherever it is, if you are able to find help, financial help for those who need, another Tibetan in need, I said, you have fulfilled your responsibility by being a Tibetan. So there are many things that you can do by yourself. So we can provide you initiatives and ideas as to how you can fulfill your responsibilities, even if you live very far away from Tibetan communities. So ultimately, I want to emphasize that nothing can be achieved by an individual, by himself, or an organization by itself when we are talking about a larger community. So we have to collectively work together in different fields. You work collectively with different stakeholders, and you have to be part of that process. You have to be the leading members of this process, because unless you come together, the society cannot come together. Now, some people think that maybe I'm conservative in my way of thinking, but I consider myself very liberal. I always look at the reality of situation and then see whether that is viable, feasible or not, under the given circumstances. And my mindset has always been to look ahead, to move forward. Of course, we have to learn the reasons, the causes, why it's happening, but then we have to know how do we find solution to all this. So these are things that I mentioned we can do to you. And within every community, as we say in Tibetan, every human being has a different mental disposition. Now that is based on if you're Buddhist, then we say lay, our deeds in our lives, earlier lives, or your own experience of whom you were born to, where you were brought up, what kind of environment you lived in, what schooling system, the kind of education you got, the kind of people you met, the whole lot of it, the internet, the television and everything that influences your mind. So every single person in this world has a different mental perspective. And particularly under a democratic system, everybody has their voice. So there are diverse voices, and it's inevitable. Now, I am committed. If you entrust me with the responsibility, I'm committed to be transformed by reason. If you give me a good reason why I should do that, I'll listen. But if you're just grumbling, to try to create problem within the community with no rhyme reason, I have no time to spare for that. That's the way how I will be going about my work. Now, all our irrespective of the differences. Okay, for instance, let's say Rangzhen and Uma. Okay, people who follow Rangzhen follow with a particular thinking based on Tibetan history. All that we understand, we all know that. As is generally the case, if there is a way that we can get Tibet's independence, why not? And we can never say that people who aspire for Rangzhen are unpatriotic. No, that is the truth. But people do have different backgrounds and different way of thinking in terms of when they ask for Rangzhen or how do we achieve it. So compare that with Umelam. Of course, it has its own reason. That is the reason why we are now able to be, continue to exist in the way we exist by having the Tibet issue on the international political radar. And it's all because of this thinking of His Holiness, the broad vision of His Holiness based on reality. So everybody has their own reasons, but irrespective of what you follow, depending on how much you know and how far you think ahead, what we have to do, whether you follow Rangzhen, Umelam, or any other path that you choose to follow, is you have to face your opponent. Not Rangzhen against Umelam, Umelam against Rangzhen. But then people who espouse or advocate for Rangzhen are free to speak about their position or defend their position, and similar is the case when it comes to middle way approach. So there has to be mutual tolerance, understanding of each other, but all our energies should be used against our opponent, the People's Republic of China. We cannot waste our time fighting amongst ourselves. So we can agree to disagree on certain things, but while you take part in the process of public discourse or public interest, then you should never make that individual. You cannot afford, or it's not right to make it individual enmity just because you have a different political thought or different position on that. So we have to develop this respect for diversity, but at the same time, be firm on your position. There's no issue at all. One has to be firm. One has to understand, not be wavered by just by anybody who speaks to you. You have to develop a mind where you can absorb things, analyze, and decide for yourself, not dictate by somebody else. I see no reason for you to take a leading role within the community, be a responsible Tibetan, be a responsible youth, and work cooperatively. From my part, if I'm entrusted with the responsibility, I'll make sure that we reach out as much as possible, provide as much as opportunities. Wherever I personally go, if I were elected, I would meet youth of that community in every single place that I visit. I'll make sure of that. And I have done in the past. When I was a representative of His Holiness in US, also I went to all the Tibetan communities. I asked the community leaders to organize separate meetings with youths. In some places it happened well. Some places the participation was low. So don't listen to what other people are. Don't just listen to what other people are saying. Get a holistic view and then work towards it, and then we can definitely make things happen. We can move the Tibet issue forward. Every single one of you should be an ambassador for Tibetans inside Tibet. and that is how you can become an ambassador for the Tibetan. So we will provide you the tools. We'll listen to you. You give your feedback through this presentation today. I'm asking you, do you agree or not agree? That's a different matter. Is there any way you can make this thing better? Do you have better ideas? Do you have more questions about what I said? You can send your comments. We'll respond to that. Maybe we'll create a special space for you to communicate with us, discuss with us, ask questions. Eventually, maybe from 29th of this month. But one condition, precondition that I would put is that you should have listened to my talks first. So whatever I've spoken on, please listen to that. It's half an hour, 1 hour, so it might take a few days for you to listen. Have a good understanding of how I think, what I've worked on before, and then ask good questions. You don't have to tell me the questions. You prepare 3 to 5 questions and keep it ready. If someone else asks a question that you wanted to ask, then you don't need to repeat that. So you have alternative questions to ask. And you don't necessarily need to be someone who votes for me. No way. So that's not a precondition. So please take part in it. We have to listen to each other and then take it forward. Then the empowerment of women. Now, almost everything that I have said about the youth in terms of providing all these facilities or facilitating all this process also applies for more women. My understanding of empowerment is essentially to be informed, whether it's youth or women. Women also need to be informed of what is happening and then getting hold of the opportunity. That is your job, even as a woman. Now, our job will be to provide you with opportunities. So now when we generally discuss about women empowerment and all that, it's mostly about positions that women hold in the community. And that is where we are talking about the leadership roles. That's also an important part, but there are also many other areas where it has to be looked at from a holistic point of view to take it to a different level. But from the perspective of, if you were to entrust me with the responsibility of Sikyong, I already mentioned that in my cabinet I'll have 3 women ministers. I'm repeating to you, at least 3 women ministers, to empower them eventually to become Sikyong if they want to, So then I've given a lot of thought on having more women at the helms of the offices of Tibet. We have 12, 13 offices. So these also needs representation, because I know there are many capable women who can take responsibilities. So we should have equal opportunities there. Then within the civil service, because of the nature of their gender or responsibilities at home or whatever pressure is coming, so far we have seen very few high-level civil servants. Very few that could be counted on fingers. So right now, that number is growing. Women coming up to the secretaries level in the departments, it's upcoming, and we can also see a lot of women in the Tibetan civil service. Now, what we will do is we will encourage them to stay longer to serve the community, so that they come to the ranking positions where they can be responsible leaders within the community. That we'll definitely do. Then apart from that, at the local level, we will encourage women to take part in local organizations, whether it be the local cooperative society or the local assemblies, wherever they are. Except for a few settlements, we have local assemblies everywhere. And then the cooperative societies, boards, camp leaders, all those roles that they can play in, they should. I know they are able to do it. They will be able to do it. They also know they are capable of doing it. Come forward and do it. Take the leadership role. We'll provide all the opportunities. So Then I have noticed during the workshops and seminars that I organize, there are always less participation from girls and women. So we have to increase that participation. To be empowered, you have to be informed. Without being informed, without knowing anything, if you say, I want to be in the seat of this or that chair, it doesn't make sense. Because you have to fulfill a responsibility. Just because you are a woman, you cannot be placed on a pedestal. No, that is not the case. You have to also strive, work to get that opportunity. We'll work together on this. So uh, then, of course, there are those who have not completed schools, or who are unemployed in a way. Most of them are, of course, housewives. But then there are some who can spend more time on other vocations if they can earn a little more. So anybody who is interested in learning some skills, any technical education, that they can come back to the settlement and make a sustenance, will help them. We'll provide them with all the opportunities, and also help, like the youth, the unemployed youth in the settlements. We will provide them with all the basic necessities, even to start an enterprise if they are interested in. So when we say equitable, chinyom tangde, where we are fair and unbiased, just, then when we talk about women empowerment also, of course, there are many issues that we have to make men aware of what women's aspirations are. But apart from that, um, taking hold of these opportunities, providing equal opportunities, it's there because His Holiness the Dalai Lama, this 14th Dalai Lama, is a different Dalai Lama. He is above none else. So His Holiness during this life also created, if you don't know, then His Holiness had created one seat out of 3 from each province, one seat out of 4 from each province in the parliament in the 70s. So that is how far-sighted His Holiness is. Then you talk about Geshima for nuns and many other initiatives that His Holiness has taken to take women's status to a high level. And now, wherever His Holiness has taken it, we have to take it forward. And that is what we will do. So today it became quite lengthy. Maybe this will come in 2 parts, whatever, after editing. So I've spoken about empowerment of youth, empowerment of women. How can we collectively work together, and what we can do if you were to entrust me with the responsibility, or what you have to do, what you can do. So please keep this in mind. Think about it. If it doesn't make sense, you're free to contact us through your feedback. If it makes sense, you're free to make your comments. And if you have any extra questions, you're most welcome to ask it. And then this particular session with the youth through maybe Google Meeting app, perhaps you can do through that, because Zoom, again, the company belongs to our opponent. So we'll try to organize that, and anybody can seek participation. Then you can watch it for yourself also, what I'm speaking about. I've already spoken on 4 or 5 subjects on different topics, from how to resolve the Tibetan issue to what are the responsibility of the Tibetan cabinet. There's a Kashak, and how do we keep our protect the interest and dignity of the Central Tibetan administration. How do we run it efficiently? And we also talked about how do we develop Tibetan communities all around the world, whether it's a settled community, compact community in India, Nepal, Bhutan, or scattered communities like in the West. I've spoken about that. If you're interested in listening, you can go back in the YouTube section where we have posted all those. And it's important that before you elect somebody, you know what that person has done, what that person intends to do. Then you can make a reasonable choice. Don't get misled by misinformation, disinformation. I will respond to some of the questions that the rumors that they keep floating within the community. I have responded several times. Now I'm not interested in responding because their job is to create problems within the community. So I'm not going to respond to those. But any other valid question that you have, I'm ready to answer. I'm looking forward to meeting with you again. Thank you so much. See you next time.